I still remember the way Amanda stood at the doorway that morning. Her suitcase was by her side, packed and ready, her phone clutched in one hand and a travel coffee mug in the other. She smiled at me, soft, casual, as if this was just another Tuesday, another business trip, another normal part of her fast-paced career. "It's only 3 days, babe," she said. "I'll be back before you know it." I nodded, forcing a smile, trying not to show the small pang of disappointment that always hit me whenever she left. "I know," I replied. "Be safe on the road. Text me when you land." She leaned in, kissed my cheek, too quick, too distracted, and walked out the door. Just like that. No lingering hug, no warmth in her eyes. Just gone. Amanda had been doing more and more of these business trips lately. She worked as a project manager for a growing tech company, and according to her, travel was just part of the job. Meetings, conventions, team-building retreats. Always something. And usually with her boss, Richard Harrison. I had never met the guy in person, but I'd heard his name enough times to recognize the pattern. She mentioned him often. Too often, maybe. Richard wants the presentation done by Monday. Richard's flying out with me again. Richard thinks I should lead this project. At first, I was proud of her. Amanda was smart, driven, and ambitious. I supported her every step of the way. I worked from home as a freelance software developer, which gave me the flexibility to be there when she needed me, and enough time alone to start overthinking when she didn't. Still, I told myself not to be that husband, the insecure one, the jealous one. So when she left that morning, I tried to shake it off. I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat down at my desk, and dove into code. Lines of Python and JavaScript helped drown out the nagging thoughts, but they didn't stay away for long. Later that afternoon, I was cleaning up around the bedroom, just something to pass the time. Amanda had left in a bit of a rush, so I figured I'd do a little tidying up. Her side of the closet was slightly open, and a pair of heels were sticking out at an odd angle. When I went to push them back in, I noticed something strange. There was a pair of black stilettos, elegant, sleek, expensive-looking, that I didn't recognize. I had never seen Amanda wear those before. We'd been married 6 years. I knew every pair of shoes she owned. These weren't hers. I picked one up and turned it in my hand. There was a tiny gold emblem on the heel. Designer stuff. Not Amanda's usual style. She wasn't the flashy type. And the size? A little too small for her. For a moment, I just stood there, holding it, my mind running in circles. Did she buy these recently? Maybe they're for a formal dinner or something. But why hide them behind her older shoes? Why not just wear them? I put them back and closed the closet. Maybe I was overthinking. Again, I went into the bathroom next to throw some towels in the laundry hamper. That's when I noticed something else. Her travel makeup bag was still hanging on the towel hook. She never forgot that. Amanda was meticulous when she packed. That bag went on every trip. I opened it. Lipsticks, foundation, mini brushes. Untouched. My stomach dropped. She had told me she was leaving early in the morning. She must have packed the night before. But if she had time to do that, how did she forget something so essential? I looked at the counter and saw a small black hair tie, one I'd never seen before. I stood there in silence for a long time. The quiet buzz of suspicion that had been in the background for weeks, maybe months, was no longer just noise. It had a shape now, and a name. Richard. I wanted to believe in her. I did believe in her, but something didn't feel right. Not anymore. That night, I tried texting her. Me. How's the hotel? Long drive? No response for hours. When she finally replied, it was short. Amanda. Busy. Day. Just got in. I'll call you in the morning. No, I miss you. No emoji. Not even a love you. Just cold, like a business reply. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the shoes, the makeup bag, the hair tie, the missing pieces that didn't add up. Then I opened her drawer, where she sometimes kept receipts and travel documents she meant to expense later. I wasn't snooping, I told myself that. But maybe I was. My hands were shaking. That's when I found it. A hotel receipt, printed, folded neatly. The date was from 2 weeks ago. The hotel, not the one she told me she stayed at. The city, the same as this current trip. It wasn't part of her company's usual bookings. I knew that because they always stayed at Marriott downtown. But this was a boutique hotel. Cozy, private, romantic. And the room, a single king bed. I sat back, holding the paper like it was a live wire. The edges of my vision blurred. I wasn't sure what to think, but deep down, I already knew. Amanda wasn't where she said she was, and I had a sickening feeling this wasn't just a one-time thing. I stared at that receipt for a long time. It felt cold in my hands, though it was just paper, innocent, ordinary. But to me, it was damning, concrete, undeniable. The date, 2 weeks ago. The hotel, the Magnolia Suites, not the downtown Marriott. Her company always used the room type, deluxe king, single occupancy. But I wasn't stupid. I knew what single occupancy really meant in these contexts. I tried to recall what she had told me that day. Amanda said she had an overnight strategy meeting with her team, that they were short-staffed and she needed to carry more weight. She even mentioned how exhausted she was when she got home the next evening, said she barely slept. Now, holding this piece of paper, I realized she hadn't been tired from meetings. She'd been tired from lying. My first instinct was to call her, confront her, but I stopped myself. This wasn't some sitcom where everything is resolved in a heated 5-minute phone call. No, I needed more proof, more truth. Because part of me still clung to the idea that I could be wrong, that there was a reasonable explanation. I pulled out my laptop, opened the browser, and searched for the hotel's number. I hesitated before dialing, heart racing. My hand was shaking slightly, enough that I had to switch the phone to speaker. The receptionist picked up with a cheerful voice. "Thank you for calling the Magnolia Suites. How may I assist you today?" I took a deep breath. "Hi, yes. I'm trying to confirm a past stay. My wife, Amanda Collins, was a guest there about 2 weeks ago. I just need to verify the dates she stayed. It's for our family records." I hated how natural the lie sounded coming out of my mouth. "1 moment, sir. Let me check." A minute passed, then 2. I tapped my fingers anxiously against the table. "Sir?" The receptionist returned. "Yes, Amanda Collins did stay with us. She checked in on Thursday evening and checked out Saturday morning." "Was she alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. A pause. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't share guest details due to privacy policy." "Understood," I said quickly. "Thanks for your help." Just before she hung up, she added, almost as an afterthought, "But the reservation was made under a Mr. R. Harrison." Click. My stomach dropped. Richard, her boss. The same man she said she respected. The same man she claimed was happily married with 2 kids. The same man she said she had nothing but a professional relationship with. So, why was he booking hotel rooms for both of them? I sat there in stunned silence. There was no denying it anymore. Amanda had lied, not once, not by accident, but carefully, repeatedly. She'd come home that weekend and told me all about her presentation. We'd even had dinner that night. She held my hand across the table, smiled at me like everything was fine, and the whole time, she had just come back from sleeping with another man. I felt like a fool, like some pathetic extra in a movie I didn't even know I was starring in. That night, I barely slept. I kept turning over in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how we got here. When did it begin? How long had she been lying to me? Was it just Richard, or had there been others? Every memory became suspect. Every "I love you" now echoed with suspicion. By morning, I made up my mind. I needed to see it for myself. Amanda had said she'd be in Summit City this week, staying at the downtown Marriott from Wednesday to Friday. That was a 3-hour drive from our place. Not exactly a quick trip, but I didn't care. I packed a small bag, left a note on the kitchen counter, just in case, and hit the road. It felt like I was driving straight into a nightmare. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. What if I caught them? Together? What would I even do? Would I yell? Would I cry? Would I walk away? I didn't know. I just needed to see it. Something inside me needed the truth. Raw, painful, real. I arrived in Summit City just after noon. I parked across the street from the downtown Marriott. Hours passed. I didn't see Amanda. I didn't see Richard. Just business people coming and going. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they were actually inside, playing it safe. But something didn't sit right with me. That hotel, it felt too public, too monitored. So I drove around. I checked nearby hotels. I don't know what I was hoping. For divine coincidence, a miracle, that's when I saw it. Amanda. She was walking out of the Willow Plaza Hotel, just 2 blocks from the Marriott. She wasn't alone. Right beside her was Richard. He was laughing. She was smiling. Their hands brushed. Then, without hesitation, she grabbed his hand, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. I froze. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it might explode in my chest. I fumbled for my phone and snapped a few pictures. Then I turned on the video. My hands trembled, but I got enough. Amanda, my wife, the woman I had built my life with, stepping out of a hotel in broad daylight hand in hand with her boss. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I couldn't. I just sat there in my car, staring at the screen, watching the loop of them walking. I felt nothing and everything all at once. Betrayal, rage, numbness, sadness, shame, but most of all, a quiet, devastating sense of finality. I sat in the car for a long time, engine off, hands trembling, my eyes fixed on the video I had just recorded. Again and again I watched it. Amanda stepping out of the hotel, laughing, reaching for Richard's hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if I didn't exist, as if we never existed. For 6 years, she had been my wife, my partner, the woman I promised to grow old with. And now, here she was, stepping out of a hotel in broad daylight with another man. Not hiding, not flinching, just there. And that man was her boss, Richard Harrison. He didn't look like a villain, clean-shaven, tall, confident, polished in a corporate sort of way. The kind of man who always had the right answer in meetings, who smiled at waiters and shook hands with board members. I hated him instantly. Not just for sleeping with my wife, but for acting like he deserved her. I wanted to get out of the car, march across the street, confront them, scream, make a scene, but I didn't. Something inside me, some small rational fragment, held me back. This wasn't the time. Not yet. I didn't want a messy explosion. I wanted the truth, and I wanted her to know that I knew. So instead, I started filming. I zoomed in, captured every movement. Her hand on his shoulder, his smirk, her laugh, her body language, light, relaxed, like she had nothing to hide. I followed them for a few blocks, keeping a safe distance. They walked into a small Italian restaurant, tucked away behind a bookstore, classy, quiet, a place for long conversations and shared wine. Definitely not the kind of spot for business discussions. I waited outside in the car. For over an hour. I stared at the restaurant's door like it was a portal to another dimension. Occasionally, I glanced at the rearview mirror, not to check traffic, but to make sure I still recognized myself. Because in that moment, I didn't feel like me anymore. I felt hollow, like something had been carved out of me without anesthesia. Eventually, they came out. Amanda was smiling, holding a little takeout bag. Richard held the door for her like a gentleman. Then, before parting, they embraced, just long enough for it to be more than friendly. She kissed him on the cheek. He said something that made her laugh, and then they walked off in separate directions. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real, physical, undeniable. My wife was cheating on me, and not in a one-night stand kind of way. No, this was intimate, familiar, comfortable. That kiss on the cheek said more than words ever could. The drive home felt endless. 3 hours of silence and empty roads. My hands gripped the steering wheel like I was holding on to the last pieces of my sanity. Replayed everything in my head. Every fight we never had. Every night she came home late. Every time she said, "It's just work." God. How many times had she lied to my face, and I believed her, because I trusted her, because she was my wife. Pulled into our driveway just after midnight. The house looked exactly as I left it. Calm, undisturbed, cruelly peaceful. I went inside, sat on the couch, and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, bitter tears. The kind that come from losing something you never thought you'd lose. The next morning, Amanda texted me around 9 a.m. Amanda, morning babe. Long day ahead. Meetings till late. I'll call you tonight. I stared at that message for a long time, so casual, so perfectly crafted, like nothing had happened. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Later that afternoon, I made my decision. I opened my laptop and created a folder titled Amanda, the Truth. Inside it, I uploaded the hotel receipt screenshots of her texts from that weekend, the video of her and Richard walking out of the hotel, the photos from the restaurant IT. Wasn't revenge. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity, about reclaiming my reality, about no longer letting someone I loved gaslight me into questioning my own instincts. When Amanda returned home the next evening, I was calm. She walked through the door, dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes. God, I'm exhausted, she sighed, heading toward the kitchen. I swear, these trips are going to be the death of me. I stayed silent. She opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of wine, poured herself a glass. Then she noticed me on the couch. "You okay?" she asked. "You look pale." Still, I said nothing. I just looked at her. Not with rage, not with pain, just stillness. She sat down beside me, confused. "Jason." I picked up the remote and pressed play. The TV screen lit up. There she was, walking out of the Willow Plaza Hotel, laughing, holding Richard's hand. Amanda's face froze. She didn't move. She didn't breathe, and I whispered the only thing I could say. "You lied." Amanda didn't say a word. Her eyes were glued to the TV, frozen mid-step. Her hand clutched the wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. On the screen, the loop replayed. Her stepping out of the Willow Plaza Hotel, smiling, brushing, her hand against Richard's, then clasping it like they'd done it 1,000 times before. I let the silence hang. I wanted her to sit in it, to feel it press down like it had on me for days. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "What is this?" I didn't look away. "You tell me." She blinked slowly. "Jason, it's not what it looks like. That line, that cliché." I almost laughed, I really did. But the pain in my chest was too sharp to allow it. "Then explain it," I said quietly. "Because to me, it looks like you just walked out of a hotel with your boss, holding hands, after lying to me about being at the Marriott." Amanda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then, just as quickly, the defensiveness kicked in. "Were you spying on me?" she asked, voice rising. "Following me?" I drove 3 hours, I said calmly, because I had to know. Because I found this. I picked up the hotel receipt from the coffee table. In your jacket. 2 weeks ago, Amanda. Another hotel. Same city. Same man. Her face went pale. All the colour drained from her cheeks. Her breath caught in her throat, and she sat back like someone had punched her. I wanted to believe you, I said. I really did. Even after all the late nights, the vague texts, the sudden trips. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid, that you wouldn't do something like this to me. She covered her face with both hands. Her shoulders trembled. Then, she broke. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. I swear. I stared at her, waiting. It started months ago. After that conference in Denver, she said, still not looking at me. Richard. He was just there. He listened. He understood. I felt seen. I felt my jaw tighten. And I didn't make you feel seen. She shook her head quickly. No, I mean yes, you always have. But things got routine. We stopped talking like we used to. Everything became work, chores, bills. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. So your solution was to fall into bed with the guy who signs your paycheck? She flinched. It wasn't like that. It was emotional at first. I was lonely. I didn't plan to cheat. But you did. Silence. And you kept doing it, I added. It wasn't a one-time mistake, Amanda. It was planned, repeated, covered up with lies. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, her mascara slightly smudged. I didn't know how to stop. I laughed bitterly. You could have started by not starting. She stood too now, moving toward me as if closeness could fix this. Jason, I never stopped loving you. That was never in question. I took a step back. Don't, I said. Don't say you love me while sleeping with someone else. That's not love. That's convenience. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I didn't want to hurt you. You just didn't want to get caught. We stood in silence. Two people who used to be everything to each other, now reduced to broken truths and quiet rage. You know what hurts most? I finally said. It's not even the sex. It's the lies. The way you looked me in the eyes and said you were working late. The way you kissed me goodbye while knowing you were going to meet him. Amanda sobbed. Not the performative kind. Real, ugly crying. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. You always said honesty mattered more than anything, I said. That trust was everything in a marriage. So what happened, Amanda? When did I stop being enough? She couldn't answer. That night, I slept in the guest room. I couldn't bear to be near her. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her hand in his, her laugh, the way she looked at him. When I woke up the next morning, she was already in the kitchen, staring out the window, coffee in hand. I called in sick, she said quietly. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't respond. I want to fix this, she said, turning toward me. Whatever it takes. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't sure if I believed her, or if I even cared. Some things can't be unbroken. I didn't answer Amanda that morning. She said she wanted to fix things, that she'd do whatever it takes. But those words felt weightless now, like leaves falling off a dying tree. Pretty, maybe, but already dead. I went upstairs, showered, got dressed, packed a small bag. I needed air. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't owe her that anymore. I drove for hours, no destination, just a full tank and a mind that wouldn't slow down. I ended up at a lakeside park 2 towns over. It was quiet, no kids, no joggers, just still water and the occasional chirp of a bird. I sat on a bench and tried to feel something other than hollow. Amanda's confession the night before echoed in my head. It started after Denver. I felt seen. I didn't plan to cheat. What a joke. Cheating isn't something you fall into. It's a choice. A series of them. Late-night texts, private meetings, deleted messages, secret smiles. Every little decision was a step away from me, from us, and she took those steps willingly. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder labeled Amanda, the Truth. I rewatched the videos, not to punish myself, but to remember why I was here, why I couldn't just forgive and forget like it never happened. Because this wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal in its purest form. After a while, I texted Nate, my best friend since college. He was the kind of guy who never sugarcoated things, which was exactly what I needed. Me. Can I come over? Nate. Always. Want me to bring a baseball bat or a beer? Me. Just the beer. That evening, I sat on Nate's back porch, sipping something cold, the sky turning orange behind us. You sure she's not just trying to cover her ass? He asked after I told him everything. I think she's sorry, I said. But not for what she did. Just that she got caught. Nate nodded slowly. That tracks. They always cry when the mask falls off. He wasn't wrong. I'd seen the shift in Amanda's face. The instant I showed her the video, the panic wasn't just about guilt. It was about consequences. She didn't break down because she hurt me. She broke down because the life she'd been balancing on lies was finally collapsing. Back home the next morning, Amanda was waiting. Her eyes were swollen. She hadn't slept. You didn't come back last night, she said, voice small. I needed space. Did you tell anyone? Yes, I replied. Nate knows. He's the only one so far. She looked down. Are you going to tell my parents? My job? I raised an eyebrow. You're worried about your job right now? She flinched. It's not just about us, she mumbled. There are consequences. You should have thought about that before you slept with your boss. She bit her lip, hard. I didn't mean to. Stop saying that, I snapped, my voice finally breaking its calm. You meant every decision you made, every time you booked a room, every time you told me you were tired from meetings, every time you smiled at him across a table. She broke into tears again, but I didn't move to comfort her. I just stared at her, watching her finally experience even a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. That night, something changed. I started digging. Not because I wanted more pain, but because I needed to know the full truth. I couldn't just sit in limbo with pieces of a broken puzzle. So I started asking around. I called one of Amanda's co-workers, Rachel. We'd met a few times at company barbecues. She liked me. She picked up on the second ring. After some awkward small talk, I asked carefully, Hey Rachel, can I ask you something? Off the record? Sure, she said, her voice tense. Was there ever talk around the office about Amanda and Richard? There was a long pause. A too long pause. Yeah, she finally said. There was. My stomach dropped. Rachel continued, her voice hushed now. People have been whispering for a while. They always travel together. Long lunches, private meetings. There were rumors, but no one said anything because, well, it's Richard. HR never got involved. They wouldn't dare. He's protected, and Amanda's been killing it in her role. They looked like a power duo. I felt sick. So everyone knew? I asked. Not knew, just suspected. You know how that goes. Yeah, I did. The gut punch was, strangers saw the cracks before I did. That evening, Amanda tried again. I scheduled therapy, she said, handing me a flyer. Couples counseling. I want to make this work. I didn't say anything. Please, she said. We can fix this. I'll quit my job. I'll go no contact with Richard. I'll do anything. I looked at her, really looked, and said, You should have done all that before you tore everything down. She dropped the flyer on the table. Her hands were shaking. I know I hurt you, Jason. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging you. Don't throw us away. I stood, slowly. I'm not the one who threw us away. And I walked out of the room. I woke up the next morning with a strange kind of clarity. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was close. Like the fog had started to lift. Like I could finally see the path forward, even if I didn't know where it would lead. I made coffee. Fed the dog. Sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop, and without another second of hesitation, I typed in, "Best divorce lawyers near me." I didn't tell Amanda right away, not because I was trying to hurt her, but because I didn't want a dramatic scene. I didn't want the sobbing or the bargaining or the promises she wouldn't keep. I wanted dignity, closure. I wanted out. I scheduled a consultation for the next day. That night, Amanda noticed the shift. "You're quiet," she said, watching me across the dinner table. Her fork sat untouched next to a barely eaten plate of pasta. "I've said everything I needed to say," I replied. "Jason, don't shut me out, not like this." I looked at her. For a moment, she looked like the woman I married. The soft, brown eyes, the nervous tuck of her hair behind her ear, the hint of vulnerability. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. "I'm not shutting you out," I said calmly. "I'm letting go." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "You'll find out tomorrow." The next afternoon, I sat in a polished office across from a woman named Linda Marks, divorce attorney, sharp eyes, professional tone, and just enough empathy to make me feel seen without being pitied. I told her everything, from the first receipt to the video, from Amanda's confessions to her co-worker's confirmation. Linda listened silently, taking notes. When I finished, she asked only one question. "Do you want to fight, or do you want it clean?" I didn't hesitate. "Clean. I want to walk, and away with my head up." She nodded. "Then we'll get you out with dignity. No drama. No games." That evening, I came home and found Amanda in the living room, sitting on the couch with a box of old photos. Our wedding day, our honeymoon in Hawaii, her graduation, all the pieces of a life we built together. She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Do you remember this one?" she asked, holding up a picture of us laughing in the rain. I did. I remembered it vividly, and I also remembered how real it felt back then, before the lies, before Richard. "I remember," I said. "But remembering isn't the same as trusting." Her face crumpled. "Please, don't do this." I walked to the counter and placed a white envelope on the table. She stared at it like it was a bomb. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," I said simply. "Linda Marks, she's the attorney. It's a no-fault filing. You'll get your share. I'm not here to punish you. I just want to move on." Amanda's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "You're just giving up." "No," I said. "You gave up. I'm just catching up." The next few days were quiet, strange, almost surreal. We still lived under the same roof, like ghosts passing through a house that no longer felt like home. The silence was heavy, but not hostile, just final. Amanda tried one last time. She knocked on my door late at night. I opened it, expecting anger or desperation. Instead, she stood there holding a photo album. "I know this won't fix anything," she said, "but I wanted you to have this." It was a collection of our best moments, not just the big ones, but the quiet, candid ones. Sunday mornings, road trips, lazy afternoons. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking, "for all of it." "I know. I still love you." "I know." I took the album, closed the door, and cried for the last time. 3 weeks later, I moved out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a bitter note. I didn't pack in rage. Packed in silence, carefully, thoughtfully, a few clothes, my laptop, some books, the photo album, and my self-respect. Amanda stood by the window, watching me load the car. She didn't say anything, neither did I. Some endings don't need words. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of grief and freedom. I had loved Amanda. Deeply, honestly. But love isn't enough without honesty, without loyalty. And once it's broken, some things can't be rebuilt. I didn't know what the future would hold, where I'd go next, but for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I wasn't carrying her lies anymore. 6 months have passed since I walked out of that house, since I left Amanda, the life we built, and all the shattered promises behind. Some days, it still feels unreal, like it happened to someone else. But then, I look in the mirror, and I see it. Not the pain, not the betrayal. I see clarity, growth, a version of me I hadn't known in years. The first few weeks were rough, no pretending otherwise, sleeping alone in a half-furnished apartment, waking up and forgetting she wasn't beside me, making coffee for 2 out of habit. But slowly, one quiet morning at a time, those habits faded, and something else took their place. Freedom. The freedom to breathe without suspicion. The freedom to build something without cracks beneath the surface. Word got around. Richard's wife found out everything. Turns out Amanda wasn't the only one keeping secrets. She filed for divorce not long after I did. Richard tried to play it cool at first, but the company wasn't having it. There were emails, photos. Someone in HR anonymously leaked the whole affair to the board. Within 2 months, he was invited to resign. Amanda wasn't far behind. She tried to tough it out, pretend it was just rumors and office politics. But when Richard left, her safety net vanished. The same leadership team that once praised her now saw her as a liability. She was let go in what the company called a mutual decision. She called it unfair. I called it karma. One evening, maybe 2 months ago, she texted me, "Amanda, I miss you, not just what we had, but you. The real you. I didn't know what I lost until I saw it walk away." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I did something that felt almost foreign. I didn't reply. She sent others, long ones, emotional ones. She said she'd been going to therapy, that she'd discovered her patterns, that she realized. Richard was a projection of unresolved needs. I didn't need the psychoanalysis. I didn't need the closure. I already had it, because something amazing happened after I left. I found myself again. I started running. Just a mile a day at first, then 2, then 5. Not to escape anything, just to feel my feet hit the ground. My lungs work for me, not against me. I picked up my guitar again, dusted off the old notebook where I used to write lyrics before life got too loud. And one night, while playing at an open mic, I met someone. Her name's Emily. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes about frozen pizza. She asked if the song I played was original. It was. She said it sounded honest. I said it was. We're taking it slow. I'm not rushing into anything. But for the first time, I don't feel like I'm chasing something or running from something. I'm just being, and that feels good. People say betrayal changes you. They're right. It breaks you open, forces you to look at the raw parts of yourself, your needs, your fears, your blind spots. It teaches you that love without honesty is a performance, that loyalty without respect is a prison. But if you survive it, and I mean really survive it, you come out stronger, quieter, wiser, and most of all, you learn to trust your gut, because it was whispering long before the truth exploded. Sometimes I wonder if Amanda regrets it. Not just the affair, but losing me. Not the man she cheated on, but the man who stayed, who tried, who believed. And maybe that's the part that hurts her the most, because she didn't just lose a husband. She lost someone who loved her deeply, who showed up, who forgave until he couldn't anymore. And me, I didn't lose, I learned. So here I am, 6 months later, standing taller, sleeping better, building something new, this time with truth as the foundation. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone walking through what I walked through, it's this: you're not weak for loving someone who betrayed you. You're strong for walking away when they did it anyway. The end.